Welcome back, Mike. How has your week been?
It's been busy, for reasons talked about in the bootleg.
Yep.
I guess
Yep.
I'll just get this out of the way because I should mention Life HQ one more time. I've been working really hard at this. Life HQ is my done for you Obsidian Vault. It's not completely done for you. I'm trying to give you all of my workflows, but in a way that you can take the modules that you want and just start, journaling or managing tasks and projects or connecting book notes or tracking habits, all that stuff is in there. So we mentioned this, I think, on the last show. As this one goes live, I need to mention it one more time because it's going to be released October 1st. So before this releases, but after we record. And if you buy it in that first week, I'm actually going to be doing a live onboarding call with everyone who buys. So like a free webinar where we walk through how it all works and I'll answer any questions that people have. So price is going to be $197 for that first week. It's going to go up to $297 after that. So if you want to save $100, you can go check it out at practicalpkm.com/lifehq. Put a lot of work into this. There's videos there which show all the workflows. The one about halfway down the page is like 22 minutes and it walks through most of the stuff that's in there. But I keep adding new things to it. And it's a labor of love, but I'm really excited to get this out into the world.
Yeah, I let me add a little bit of here commentary. So Mike's getting put through the ringer right now. For those of you who, might be seeing this and might not, or might know nothing about this, the community has been bombarding him with feedback, and it's good feedback.
Which, to be clear, is what I want.
Yes. It's not the kind of feedback to where it's like, oh, like, Mike, you're amazing. And, like, you don't have to do anything and it's perfect and it's shiny and it's golden and just ship it. It's like, okay, here's, 1,000 words of feedback and 800 of those words are, I think you should consider doing the following, which means it adds a ton of work to Mike's plate as he's making revisions.
Which, again, that's exactly what I wanted.
Yeah.
I asked the people to be in that beta program because I knew they were going to not pull any punches and tell me, oh, this is great. Like, I want to know what is not great about it. And all the feedback has been incredible. Most of it has been, this is a great product, but it's confusing for new users, or I wish you had this sort of onboarding thing. And so that's the kind of stuff that I'm building out there.
Yeah. So my point being is it's getting refined and I think when it ships, it's definitely a significantly better final product, I think, from what it started as. And I think I told last time, it started out really, really great in terms of where it was, and the improvements are so much better. And then I told Mike earlier on the bootleg, it's like, I also learned that I am not nearly as critical as a lot of people, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Like, when people ask me for feedback, I should probably be a little more critical because I tend to be a little too, like, kind of hand wavy, nice about it.
It's all good. I will say that one of the things I want to do with this, we talked about this before we hit record. People who buy this are going to get lifetime updates. This is going to be my signature product. If I'm going to be known for one thing on the internet, I want it to be this. Like, this is what I want to continue to build over the next 10 years. And I already have a public, based on the feedback, I created a public roadmap. So it's a public Trello board.
Oh, yeah.
And I have probably 12 months worth of things that I want to add to Life HQ already on that Trello board.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw you put that out there, and I was like, man, that's a really smart idea to throw that Trello board out there. So
that wasn't my idea. That was one of the points of feedback I got. It was like, can we see what other people have shared more easily? And I'm like, let me figure that out.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, Mike, let's move into follow-up. So we had a couple different items. I'll start. So my first item of follow-up was to keep playing around with Zettelkasten, and I will tell you that in true fashion, the second-ish, first-ish, second-ish, third week of semester, I have not done this because I have not had any spare time other than to family, read book, and do my job. So therefore, my entire existence now has been full in a good way, like not in a bad way, but it's been full in terms of, getting things done. So I haven't had time to really play around with anything. And that's why, it's going back to your Life HQ thing. I've been lacking on the feedback side of it because it's just, it'll settle down. Now we're into, once we get into week 4, week 5, things really start to settle down. You start to get in your groove and find your pockets of playing around time. I can tell you that I'm still strong on the idea of Zettelkasten. So just like before when we talked about in the episode, I think Dotto's book made it the most accessible kind of way into it or thinking about it that I've had. And I still like the idea of it, but I also am learning, and we kind of debated this. I can't remember how much we debated this in the episode, but like I still think there's a separation from me for my Zettelkasten from a connecting idea standpoint, and then like a using Obsidian for the Life HQ type stuff. And you and I kind of disagreed on like 1 vault versus 2 vaults, and I just think my brain works better with 2 different vaults or 2 different spaces for these kind of ideas, to where when I go into the one, I'm connecting ideas, I'm making these things. And then when I go into the other one, I'm managing life. Like I'm managing the day and I'm managing life. And I probably, if I, hired you as a consultant, I could probably figure out a way to do that within 1 vault and like actually be okay, like clean brain way to do that. But for some reason I default to 2 different vaults. So keep playing around with Zettelkasten. That is a red no-go. Haven't been able to play around with it that much, but I still like the idea of it, and it's going to come back for sure. My second one was capture and process fleeting notes. So I've actually done in my mind, I've done a really good job on this, primarily for 2 different tools. So this comes off of some of your PKM stuff where, what is the job for this specific tool? And it's okay if that's the only thing that does, right? It doesn't have to do everything. If it's okay if it does that one job. So what I always run into is the idea that I don't always have my phone with me, and that's on purpose. But then I'll get these ideas and I want to capture them. But then when I do have my phone, they always get converted into digital. So I may as well put them in digital if I have my phone. So drafts, and then I carry around this little notebook now. And I think I'm going to keep these 2 things where it's like I always have a notebook in my back pocket, and then I always have the drafts app available. And what I really like about the drafts app is if I'm on a run, which I get a lot of ideas on runs, but I don't like to pull out my phone and like try to run while I'm looking at my phone, or I don't like to stop my run. But if I hit that little button, it's on my home screen. If I hit the little button, the little drafts button on my watch, I can then dictate in and get a good enough version of that idea to where when I get back to my computer or my phone or whatever it is, and I can process that and like retain that idea. So the drafts app has been huge for runs and like those quick notes while you're driving or whatever it is where you can dictate in. And then in particular the Apple Watch app. And then my little pocket notebook that I carry around for when my phone's off somewhere laying around in the house, I can just write down that quick little note to do what I want to do. Where I'm falling down on this, I would say, is the fact that I'm not as good at processing them. So it's like I need to be more regular on processing them and turning them from these fleeting notes into either tasks or ideas that go into like a Zettelkasten system. But progress, not perfection. That's my take on this. So
nice.
How about you?
Well, I want to just double click on something that you mentioned there about the needing to be better at processing them. I would argue that you really don't. That's the nature of the fleeting notes. If it never makes it into anywhere else in your system, then it's just a value indicator of there really wasn't a whole lot there. And then you just keep capturing things. And if it comes back, then you have your antenna up for that sort of thing. But I think it's totally fine to just process that inbox that you capture things into drafts periodically. I think probably the ideal cadence for me is about a week. But if it goes longer, I'm not going to stress about it. I'll go through that stuff, and then it's totally fine to just select all archive.
Yeah.
If nothing is jumping off the page at you when you are processing that stuff. So I don't think that I would say, I think it's serving its intended purpose as is, even if you don't transfer that stuff over as often as you'd like.
Yeah.
But glad that you are using the drafts complication on your watch. I think that's the ideal workflow for this.
Yeah, I agree.
I've been doing that for years, and it has worked really well for me. Awesome. Okay, so my action items, the impromptu Life HQ sales pitch was a justification for saying I didn't really do these. So one of them was, ask what other notes should I connect to this when creating a note. I really haven't created any new notes other than stuff that I need to create for Life HQ.
Yep.
That has taken over my life recently. And then the other one is Write for Social. I haven't done this yet either. And the intention of this was to start building a attention for the Life HQ launch. I just haven't had the bandwidth. It's more important for me that I get the product right. However, I know this is important, and I have a feeling this is going to change shortly because I have signed up for the very last rite of passage cohort.
I wondered if you were going to. Yep.
Well, I am not in a spot to drop $4,000 on a cohort, but I did get a pretty hefty scholarship. So I've wanted to take rite of passage for a long time, and when this was the last one, I tried to figure out a way to make it work, and I really just can't. I can't do it. And then I saw David Perel mention the scholarship on Twitter, and I was like, just fill it out. What's the worst that can happen? You don't get in. So I filled it out, and I got a significant scholarship. So I'm excited to be a part of the last one here. It kicks off on October 7th. So right after Life HQ, I get to do a whole bunch more writing. And I know that there's a social component to this. So I'm believing that that's going to help kickstart this.
Nice. Very good. All right. Are you ready to get into today's book, Mike?
Let's do it.
All right. So today's book is 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think by Brianna Wiest. The format for this one is going to be very different because this is literally 101 essays that are not organized in any fashion, but they are essay 1, essay 2, and the whole way through down to essay 101. In the true spirit of the different style that we're going to do, let me give you an idea, and then I'm going to pitch something to Mike that he doesn't know. I'm going to pitch to him and see how you respond.
Oh boy.
So we're going to do this in rounds where Mike and I have chosen the ones where we got the biggest takeaway or the meaningful ones to us. So it'll go myself and then Mike, and then myself and then Mike, and we'll do that the whole way down around, or we'll switch the rotation, but it'll be one of us per round. We're going to get as many as we can get done. We've prepared a list of at least 10, maybe a few more. And then if we have a lightning round at the end, we'll do a lightning round at the end. Here's the thing I'm going to throw at Mike right now. Mike, do you want to do style and rating right now? Because I feel like I need to get style and rating like off my chest. Like I feel like I need this to be out there. That way, like it just isn't bothering me for the next hour and a half or however long we record. But I understand if you don't want to, and I can suppress that if you don't want to change the format of the show.
Yeah, I think we got to save that for the end. Make people listen. Well, we do have chapters in the podcast, so if you want to skip to it, you can. But
oh my goodness. Okay, all right. I will do my best. But if you start to feel the anxiety and the tension, just know that that's where that's coming from.
All right. So I will say that this book forced me to change the way that I take notes. So I started with the mind map format, and you mentioned it is literally 101 essays, and most of them involve some sort of longer listicle. Mm-hmm. So I did the first one, and then I realized like there is no way I'm capturing all this stuff.
Agreed.
So what I did is I actually just underlined the things that stood out to me as I was reading it, and then I created a personal index in the back. So I've got the page numbers, and then I starred the ones that I really wanted to talk about. I think I've only got 5 or 6 stars. So,
yeah.
But I realized as we were getting ready for the episode here that because I had done that, I don't have like a text-based version of this that I can pull up on my computer and look at. And then I thought about, do I want to create one? Like you actually did that and provided a link inside of the Notion doc for this episode. But every time I thought about doing that, I was like, no, I don't want to spend more time on this.
You should not have done that. The only reason this went this way was because I do my highlighting, and I did the exact same thing. Like the way I normally take notes, I would have done essentially like most of the essay titles. And I started to do that, and I was like, oh no. Like I was like, I can't do 101. Like, so I just started to like essentially read the essay first, figure out if there was anything or how many relevant things were in there. And then if it was relevant enough, then I'd go back and I'd acknowledge the essay title and bring it into like a full, okay, this is one I actually care about. But like I had to the majority of them just fall away because I was like, yeah, this just isn't good enough for me to capture anything. So, okay, so we got an idea on the idea of the book. Mike, if you had to summarize the core ideas before we get into the rounds, like I have like 3 or 4 different themes that I've developed, and I'm curious at what yours were. Like, what would you say the 3 or 4 or 5 themes that the author talks about?
I don't know. So I actually felt there was some contradictory stuff in here because it is just the essays. So I guess the framing I had for this when I picked it up, it reminded me a lot of The Practice, I think, by Seth Godin.
Okay.
A lot of Seth Godin's books are simply like a bunch of essays, and I think actually in that one he had several essays that had the same title, if I remember correctly. Okay. Because he just publishes them to his blog and then he packages them up in a book. So that's kind of what I thought was happening with this from the very beginning. And that, I think, kind of set a tone for me, like these have to be viewed in isolation. So I'm having a real hard time thinking about the themes. I guess if I had to pick one, there's a lot of stuff in here about like asking questions, clarifying questions. There's a lot of stuff in here, I think, about changing the way that you think about your work and what you do professionally, some of which I agree with, some of which I disagree with. We'll get to that when we get to the bullets. And I guess the other big thing that kind of stood out to me was, and maybe I'm just hypersensitive to this, I don't know, but it seemed like she talked about sex a lot.
Okay.
Yeah, and love in particular, but as a broader theme for like the essays. But I was kind of surprised how often it sort of, I'll say, devolved into like do what feels good.
Yep.
Because I don't agree with that.
Yeah. So I would go love was a big one. And then tied closely to that were relationships in general, right? So love and relationships were a theme in my mind. Suffering was a theme. I thought that she hit on in a couple different ones. And then like, what do I do with my life? I thought was another one. Like, okay, I'm lost or whatever. Like, what do I do? I don't know where I'm going to go. That was another one. And then I'm blanking on the fourth one. I had a fourth one, but like there, I felt like there were these pockets, but I completely agree with you that I very much got the impression that these were all written separately. They did not feel like, and I got the impression, again, I don't know how she actually wrote it, that they were all written separately. They were not like, oh, I'm going to write a series of essays on this topic. I'm going to write a series of essays on this topic. It was more just like, I wrote a bunch of essays and now I'm going to package those into a book, but I'm not really going to like organize them in any way. And that's not the point of this text. So, okay. So now we've got an idea of kind of where we went. I would agree with you just to say there were certain things in here that I thought were wonderful. There's certain things in here where I like, vehement is probably too strong of a word, but I strongly disagreed with, right? Like, so I will do that. I'm probably not going to go into as much of the disagreement side of it today, just because of the nature of the way we do the show. But one of the things she does call out in one of the essays is like, hey, we can be in a world where we disagree with other people, and that's okay. So if we get into those disagreement things, hey, Brianna's a wonderful person, right? Like we are talking about a book just like we talk about any other book, and it's okay that we disagree, because I get the impression that she has a fairly strong social media following, and we may be kicking a hornet's nest here on some of the stuff we disagree with. But let's go into round one. Do you want to start, or would you like me to start?
Go for it.
Okay, so round one, I didn't make it very far in. And the other way we did this is Mike and I said, let's do it in the order that they appear in the book. That way, if you're following along or you want to look at this, we're going to try to stay true to that. We might be a little bit off because Mike and I didn't like fully share our lists before the show, so we might bounce a little bit, but it'll be like generally in the order that the book goes. So my first one comes from essay 2, which essay 2 is the psychology of daily routine. This is probably not surprising. I'm a big routine ritual kind of person. I like the idea of this. She talks about that most people that we refer to as geniuses or masters in their craft have a thing in common, that they adhere to a routine that tends to be very rigid. And then impulsiveness it is a bad thing, right? Like that it actually kind of pulls you away from doing those things that you want to do. I got my fifth theme now because it's in my notes here. Happiness. She got into happiness a lot, right? So that was another theme.
Sure.
So,
yep.
But then that happiness is not how many things you do, but how well you do them. And I really liked the general framing of this idea, right? Like, so we need routines and rituals. They help us kind of not get distracted and not, get pulled away from those things. That if we really want to live a purposeful life, that helps us stay connected. And then get rid of the idea of this, like, happiness is, oh, I did a million things today. No, happiness is I did the things I wanted to do and I did them well for that day. So essay 2, psychology of daily routine, that was my number 1 for round 1. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I'm trying to fit mine within the outline that you've got here. So I will pick one from page 22 where she mentions, this is the essay, 10 Things Emotionally Intelligent People Do Not Do.
Okay.
And she said they don't think that being fearful is a sign that they are on the wrong path. The presence of indifference is a sign that you're on the wrong path, is what she says. Fear means you're trying to move towards something you love, but your old beliefs or unhealed experiences are getting in the way, etc. And I think this is an important point. And this is kind of the nature of the book. There's some gold nuggets in here that you kind of lose the value because she immediately moves on to like the next thing in a list. And I guess that stood out to me because I've sort of gone through this in the last year and a half with leaving the day job and finding something completely different. One of the books that I had read when I was going through that was The Pathless Path by Paul Millard, which I really enjoyed. And the TLDR of that book essentially is like there is a default path, which is kind of what people are sort of naturally pushed down by the culture that we live in. And my big takeaway from The Pathless Path was essentially be brave enough to carve your own path and do the non-traditional thing, figure out a way to make it work. It's been hard. I feel like I'm finally getting to the point where I can say that I've done that. And so when I was reading that list, it kind of stood out to me. But I never really made the connection before about the emotional intelligence piece. I guess, the thing that stands out to me is she's saying that if you're emotionally intelligent, you're going down this path and you are facing this fear. And a person who does not have the emotional intelligence to see things correctly could view that as a sign that I'm on the wrong path. I'm going the wrong way. And she's saying that, no, essentially, like, the obstacle is the way. The fear is an indication that you're doing something that's worthwhile. But I've now talked way more about that point than she did in the book.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. How do you feel about, she has a phrase in there, since you brought this topic up, that fear equals interest. Like, she has this phrase, and I don't think I agree with that. Right now, it's in a different essay than you, but like, fear equals interest. Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't think that just because I am fearful of something, I think fear is telling me, or it's acknowledging to me that it's on my mind, or that it's something that I am thinking about, but that doesn't mean I'm actually like interested in it. But maybe I'm defining interest the wrong way.
Yeah, I think if you are afraid of something, it could be an indication that it's important to you. If you're afraid, you maybe are not wanting to lose something, or in the terms of choosing a different professional path. For example, I know a fear of finding out that you don't have what it takes can be something that would hold people back. You don't want to put yourself out there, as long as you don't actually leave the day job and try to make something happen. There's always the thought in the back of your head that I could do this someday if I really wanted to. And a lot of people find comfort in that. I think you do have to figure out what you're going to do with that fear, because it's not going to go away. And so one of the things that I did with Rachel was we went through Tim Ferriss's fear setting exercise, where, okay, let's just follow this to its logical conclusion. Okay, I leave the day job, I go out on my own as a creator, and it completely flops. What do we do in that case? Well, I can go get another job, right? Oh, that's the worst case scenario. That doesn't seem so bad. And are there things that we can do to mitigate against that? Yeah. So when you actually consider it for what it is, that can help you overcome it. Like, as long as you don't define it, it feels bigger and scarier in your head than it really is, which I think is why it fits in this emotional intelligence section.
Yeah.
Emotional intelligence, I guess, is a theme. If you going back to that question you asked me, she brings that up several times. But I also think this is also a theme on Bookworm. Anytime somebody brings up emotional intelligence, I feel like they don't do a very good job of addressing it for what it really is.
That is definitely a theme in the short time I've been on the show. I would agree with that completely. All right, let's move on to round 2. So my round 2 comes from Essay 12. Essay 12 is the knowing doing gap, why we avoid what's best for us and how to conquer resistance for good. I like this idea, or kind of this essay's main thesis. But basically, it's like we know what we should do. And I've talked to you about this before. I can't remember what episode it was on, where it's like, oh, I know the things I should do, but then that action intention, right? Like that, or sorry, intention action, right? I have an intention to do these things. Do I actually act on those, and do I do those? So, she makes a statement in here that writing each night, eating better, waking up earlier, choosing affirmative thoughts, speaking honestly, those kind of things. We know we should do those, but then do we actually do them? And her takeaway is like, come on, like step up and actually do those things. Do the things you know you should do. Another point she makes here, it's easier to act your way into a new way of thinking than to think your way into a new way of acting. And I like that a lot, right? Like basically, okay, if I can change these little daily actions that then adjust my thinking, that is a more straightforward path than me just continuing to tell myself, do this better, do this better, do this better, do this differently. And I like the framing of that, because the way something that's been on my mind, on my heart lately a lot, has been like mantras, if you will. Like, what are the things that I can help myself do, or what are the little rituals that I can set up, or what are the things I can do to help me be more of the kind of person that I want to be? And the reason why I like that is because I have to think really, really hard about setting those things up. So the mantras is the more thinking side of it. The rituals is the more doing or acting side of it. But I think if you put those two things together, you can almost like gamify yourself and like trick yourself into doing an intentional, or being intentional in a way that you wanted to when you actually had time to sit down and do your retreat, or do, your really hard thinking. So that's my number 2, is basically this knowing and doing gap, and how do we kind of encourage ourselves to be more of where we want to be in life.
Yeah, this one, I like the topic. I don't think she did a great job of speaking to this, at least for me. The things that you shared, like the highlighted sections, sound good in isolation. Mm-hmm. But this is like the subject of so much science and research. This is the ultimate human problem. We don't do what we know we should do. Yep. So I guess it's just the packaging. I don't like that this topic is trying to be addressed in a couple of pages in an essay, but that's not really her fault, because it was probably initially just an essay on her website. It wasn't intended to be part of a book that spoke to this particular topic. So maybe my issue is more with the style than it is with the content. But I think there's so much more to unpack with this. So this is just kind of like a tiny little taste of the topic, and this is one of the ones where I really wish you would have talked about this more.
Yeah. All right, what's your number 2?
All right, my number 2 comes from page 83. So this one actually, this is read this if you don't know what you're doing with your life. Kind of related to the previous one I realized that I just shared. But I underlined quite a bit from this particular section. And she says on page 83, the idea that we should know essentially what we're doing is a heaping pile of socially crafted BS that's been superimposed on our psyches since kindergarten, and it's holding us back. I really like that.
Yeah.
She continues to talk in this section about how you don't have to know. And I think the thing that trips people up is they feel like they have to figure this out, lock it in, and then their whole life becomes in alignment with this. I've encountered this a little bit with some of the life theme stuff that we do. I always tell people, though, that it's not written in stone. It's going to change. It's going to evolve. You just need to have something that's going to help you set a direction for right now. If you can get that, then mission accomplished. So she mentions later on the bottom of that page, which I think is, again, really great advice. You're not responsible for being the person that you once thought you'd be. Mm-hmm. So give yourself permission to change your mind and do things differently. If you're wondering what you should do with your life, it's likely that you're in limbo between realizing you don't want what you once did and giving yourself permission to want what you want now. I think that's really true. We can get anchored on the things that we decided in the past. I made this commitment, this decision 10 years ago, and I'm just going to continue to stick with it. People don't thrive when they're fulfilled. They stagnate. I always say, keep going, keep growing. Like, that's why this podcast and the whole idea of personal development is so important to me. I feel like you're never going to arrive. You just got to learn to love the journey. And then lastly, from this section, what do I want is a question you need to ask yourself every day. Now, that's not the only question that you ask every day. Mm-hmm. And it's not even the ultimate question or penultimate question, the most important question that you ask every day. There are lots of different things I think that you can decide are important, and it's not all based off of what you want, but that is something to pay attention to. You have to find the balance between the things that you want and the things that you can give and the people that you're going to help, because ultimately if you just got everything that you want, that's not going to lead to a fulfilled life either, I would argue. Yeah. But it's something to keep tabs on. And I think for myself personally, in the past, I tend to be a people pleaser. I can neglect this part of it. Well, hold on a second. What do I want out of this? Yeah. And it's okay to stand up for that sort of stuff.
Yeah. So you highlighted, it's funny that you called out the exact same things that I called out. So I won't repeat them, but like I was listening to you and I was looking at my notes and I'm like, oh yeah, I called out the exact same things in this section. So we aligned on this. My dad told me when I was younger, I was thinking about making a pretty big decision, and he goes, well, are you in jail? And I went, no. And he goes, okay. He's like, if you're not in jail or in the military, I mean, you can pretty much do, like nobody's telling you can't make a change. But like there's a balance there between, do we bail too early, and then do we acknowledge it's time to change? Like it's not acknowledge it's time to make an adjustment. So I like this section a lot too. So glad you flagged that one, because I actually didn't flag this as one of my top 10. All right, my next one is essay 25. So essay 25 is the psychology of getting unstuck and the 3 stages of making habits autonomous. The reason I'm not saying page numbers is because, Mike, I think our page numbers are different, because you had said about page 83. Well, mine was not on page 83 for some reason. So, but the psychology of getting unstuck, and the 3 stages of making habits autonomous. Now, the reason I like this is because I think getting stuck is an issue that a lot of people have, right? Where they feel like, oh, I want to make a change, but I can't because of X, Y, Z. And you start making excuses, and you start, like just kind of creating all of the reasons why you can't do the thing that you want to do. And I like how she calls out the fact that like we have a limited means for self-control. So how do we balance that, and like where do we apply self-control, and then where are we okay with kind of not being so strict on that? We eliminate, people who use time wisely eliminate unnecessary decision making. They reduce distractions. They minimize what doesn't matter, and they focus. I mean, you do a podcast called Focused, right? So it's like this is just in my mind a good principle of like, how do we keep ourselves organized, focused, and more on the autonomous way, in a way that it aligns to our goals and aligns to our mission and aligns to the things that we actually want to do. And I think if you can combine those two things, so essentially intentionality and autonomy, and if you can put intentionality and autonomy together and you can figure out a way to, do your flywheel thing where it's like that thing starts to just go in a flywheel, and now like I'm doing the things I want to do and it's just coming naturally to me and it's coming effortlessly to me. I mean, I think you've hit the sweet spot. Now, that's really, really hard to do. Like I by no means say like, oh yeah, it's just easy. Just think about it or just start doing. But I like that she brings this up, and like I think she hit it, in a fairly decent way. I want to say successful, but the reason why I didn't want to say that is because like she has another quote here that says success is a product of more a product of habit than skill, and that ties us into a bunch of old episodes that we've done and a bunch of books where you're essentially thinking about how do I develop the habits that get me to the successful end goal that I want, not how do I do the outcomes, or not how do I do the individual one-off tasks, but I develop that habit, that routine that gets me to where I want to get to. So I kind of rambled in all around places there, but I like the idea of habits and getting unstuck from where you're stuck.
Yeah, I like this one too. I feel like this topic again is of great interest to me, and she sort of does a surface level approach to it, but I think the things that you pulled out here are very good, and essentially like the understanding and using your time wisely has been the core topic for self-improvement for as long as people have written books. Like I have some books from 1900s that speak to the topic of time management.
Yep.
And I bought them because I saw them, at some thrift store somewhere, and I'm like, I want to see what the issues were for people back then. And some of it, is completely, they got a totally different context and they're talking about things a totally different way. But if you can see through the surface level stuff, you realize they're dealing with the same issues.
Yeah.
It's just more accelerated now with the digital culture that we happen to be in. I will say that I don't think it's as simple as just make it a habit and continue to develop the skill, and eventually you'll become a master. I feel like that's the beginning of the process, but you're going to have to figure out a whole bunch of stuff along the way, and it's going to be way more complicated than you realize, and you're going to run into a whole bunch of roadblocks you had no idea were there.
Yeah.
But that doesn't package quite as nicely.
Agreed.
All right. So my next one, I'm going to say essay 28. So this is page 139, the paperback one. 16 questions that will show you who you are and what you're meant to do. I really like this as an essay. I think this is a really cool listicle because these are not a question that you would ask, but they are going to be clues that you can use to kind of figure out what's really important, which essentially is the same approach I take in the life theme stuff.
I agree.
We walk through those different exercises, and then I give people a whole bunch of questions, and I tell them, don't try to answer all of these. Answer the ones that really resonate with you. And some people try to answer them all anyways when we go through the cohort, but the ones who really make traction, there's one or two things in there that really stand out to them, and then they go deep on that particular stuff. So there's 16 questions here. What and who is worth suffering for? What would you stand for if you knew that nobody would judge you, etc.? But there's two that I highlighted that I really liked. Number one, based on your daily routines, where will you be in 5 years, 10, and 20? Essentially thinking about if you just kept doing what you are currently doing, where is the logical destination? This is something people don't think about enough, myself included. We get so caught up in what we have to do today. And so you end up doing the things that are urgent. Urgency kind of masks itself as false importance. So you're like, well, I'll do this thing, but it's okay if I don't get to the gym today. And just that one isolated incident, you're right, it's not that big a deal. But if it's the beginning of a habit, and it's really easy to make that an unintentional negative habit if you are just so caught up in this like responsive mindset. I'm just responding to the things. Actually, responding is not the right word. Responding indicates, I feel, some level of intention and thoughtfulness into the response. It's more reacting. It's like knee jerk. This thing happened, and so without even thinking about it, I'm going to go do this thing. It's like when you are bored and you reach into your pocket to pull out your phone and open social media because your brain is telling you, I need to hit a dopamine. That's a reaction. That's not a response. So I feel like this is something that's helpful. And the way she frames this is a really cool thought exercise. She has no explanation for this, but I'm just saying this is how this works.
Yeah.
So when you think out into the future, what she's doing with this question is pretty brilliant, because you're anchoring that future outcome that you're trying to achieve with what you are doing today. That's what the life theme stuff is designed to do, is like you anchor your daily actions to that ideal future. And then the other one that I liked here, if you didn't have to work anymore, what would you do with your days? And again, like the framing of this question, I think is pretty brilliant, because I've asked this different ways in the life theme cohort. Essentially, like, if money was no issue, what would you do? Because that's what's implied with work, is I have to go to work to get a paycheck so that I can live and support my family, pay the mortgage, have food in the refrigerator, stuff like that. Well, take all of that out of the picture. You don't have to work anymore. You just inherited a large sum. Like, what are you going to do with your days? I think this is a really cool question. And I think the closer you can get to the things that I'm doing right now, the more happy and fulfilled you will end up being.
Yep.
Which again is like the whole idea behind the life theme and stuff like that. I tell people when we go through the cohort, you want to think big and then act small. So you want to have this day in the life of future you, but then how can you start to live aspects of that today? Now, she didn't say that, but that's where my mind went with this question. Yeah. So I think these are really cool questions. And I think the whole framing of this particular essay is pretty cool for people, especially who have never really thought about this stuff before. You know, you just need something to get you going. And I think any of these questions could be the thing that kind of jumpstarts that process for people.
Yeah, I agree. I called out the same question you did. If you didn't have to work anymore, what would you do with your days? The other one I called out in this section was, what are the 5 most common things in your daily routine aside from basics such as eating and sleeping? I think that one's a really interesting one. And then it gets more powerful when you do the one right below it, which is the follow-up to it of, where is it at? I lost it. What do you wish those 5 most common things were instead? And it's like, if you package those 2 things together, it really tells you about where your head's at for your daily activities and whether or not it's in line with what you want to do. So I liked essay 28 as well. So, okay. We are at round 4. Round 4 is, I'm going to go to essay 40, which is why logical people lead better lives in a generation where passion is the premium. Being somebody who's been trained for many, 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 many years in engineering, it probably is not surprising to you that logical makes a lot of sense to me. This also ties into, I've heard other people talk about this, like Mike Rowe has talked about this and basically, come out and been like, okay, I understand that everybody wants to talk about passion, but then there's the reality of work, right? Like, so you don't have to be passionate about your work. If it does exactly what you need it to do, it pays my bills, it provides value to society, and he'll list these things. He's like, it doesn't really matter if you're passionate or not. It can be a very fulfilling and productive type thing. So she gets in here into this and talks about the fact that, like, the opposite of passion isn't settling for lukewarm. It's saying, okay, this is logical. This gets me to where I want to go. Am I passionate about it? No, but it might allow me to do 6 other things that I want to do in my life, and there is a reason for it. There's a link to that. I deal with this all the time with students, right? Like, students they'll come in, they'll be like, oh, I want to follow my passion. And it's like, well, what's your passion? They're like, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, well then logically, what would the next step be? Like, what do you need to do? And they're like, well, I need to pay these bills and I want to live in this city because it's so-and-so and it's close to friends or it's close to family or whatever it is. And it's like, okay, then run the logic route and, like, don't worry about the fact that, you're not the most passionate of ever that's, existed about, doing whatever kind of engineering work that you want to do. She calls out here that logic helps you make decisions for the person you hope to be. Passion helps you make decisions for the person you are or were. And I think it adds this future aspect to it of it. Like, you're thinking ahead, you're thinking forward. There's a lot of other like kind of pull quotes I have from this this logic section. The one that I think is the most snarky that I like more is, take $150,000 in loans to study something you love for 5+ years, but not be able to move out, travel, get married, have kids, work a job you actually like, because you're drowning in debt for the next 30 years. That's what passion does. And it's like, I don't know. There's something about that. I read that and I just, I started laughing out loud. I was like, yeah, that is kind of what passion does. And it's unfortunate. And that's kind of a bummer. So that's my take on the whole one. I like the fact that she's contrasting logical path forward to passion.
Oh man, you brought up passion. So this was actually one that I had called out to. The only thing I wrote in the book, I did not underline a single thing, but I wrote right next to the title, "Hard Disagree."
Okay.
Now that, I think I don't disagree with the things that you were saying. I disagree with the meaning of and framing of passion here.
Okay.
Which she talks a lot about this in the book. And I hate it when people define passion this way, because essentially what she's saying when she uses the word passion is people who are doing what they love. That's probably the agreed upon definition for most people. So you can't really falter a whole lot for that. But to quote The Princess Bride, you keep using that word, I don't think it means what you think it means.
Okay.
My context for this, and I agree with a lot of the points that she's making. The working 5 years to get a degree that costs you $150,000 and you put yourself in a great big hole, that is not a great idea. But passion, I think, means something totally different than what she says here. And my basis for this comes from Todd Henry, who shared, I forget where the book was, but I remember reading, he defined passion. The word for passion actually comes from the Latin word pati, and it means to suffer. So passion is not doing what you love. People don't love to suffer. Okay, but what passion is something that is very meaningful. It's very important. It means so much to you that you are willing to suffer to see this thing come about. Okay, and just as an example, this is a religious example, but people refer to Jesus dying on the cross as the passion of the Christ. You can't tell me he was looking forward to all the pain that he had to go through. Yeah. Nobody likes doing that kind of stuff, but it was part of the bigger plan. He was focused on the outcome, and that's the part that we can apply to our lives. A lot of people love the idea of being the noun without doing the verb. So I think the traditional definition of passion would say, well, you just don't love writing enough. That's why you don't get up and write every day. And I would say, no, it's just not important enough to you. So once it is important enough to you, you'll start getting up early. You'll start writing for an hour before you go into the office. I mean, that's what I did, and that's how I started doing all the things that I did online. That beginning of the writing habit, it wasn't because I enjoyed getting up at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
It was because I had this burning desire to write a book. And I did self-publish that book. I hate pointing people to it because it was the very first thing that I wrote. And I look at it now and I'm like, I need to redo it. I could do it so much better now. But don't despise the small beginnings either. Like, that's the thing that launched me into what I'm doing. So it was the process. You can learn to love the the process, I would argue, for something like writing or creating or exercising. It's not something that you maybe enjoy doing at the beginning, but your preferences can change. And the reason that your preferences change is not because you've uncovered some secret way that you're wired. It's because you realize that this is working and it's having an impact, and it's creating this thing that is valuable to you. It's meaningful to you. So I guess that's my framing with this. But anytime I hear people talk about passion in the context that she talks about it here, and because she has a whole bunch of bullets that go along with this, and it's comparing and contrasting directly passion versus logic.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they are at odds. I think actually there's maybe a lot of overlap there. Maybe you use your logic to discover your passion.
Yep.
That's kind of what we do with the life theme stuff. I don't mean to like keep talking about the life theme stuff, but it applies to a lot of things that she's talking about here. The very first step that we walk people through is identifying the moments of impact. When did you feel fully alive? And again, there's a whole bunch of questions you can use to define that sort of stuff. But what people find is, usually it was the moment that they did something they didn't think they could do. They were really scared about giving a talk, and then they got up and they crushed it, and the response that they got from people made it all worthwhile. Those are the things. It's not, oh, I just really love doing this thing. Yeah. Wouldn't it be great if I could just do this thing for work and people could just pay me money? That's not how it works.
Yeah. Yep.
You get paid for creating things that are valuable. You create things that are valuable when you care enough about them to go through the process and pay attention to the details and really just try to do an excellent job. And then you look at what you made and you ask yourself, how could this be better? You realize it's not perfect. And then you do it again, and then you do it again, and then you do it again. And the quantity produces the quality. I don't know. I'm kind of devolving into like the creative process here, but.
All right. You're up. It's your round.
I got to pick on after that. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
All right. So let's see. Where was my next one? I think it was page 198. Yeah, this is just a short one. But this is one that I think is important. This comes from things you need to know about yourself before you'll have the life you want. So I underlined a couple things from here. When you go in choosing what you want each day of your life to consist of, how much paperwork, how much time at the computer, how many hours of leisure, you're able to actually build the existence you want from the ground up. Cal Newport calls this lifestyle design. And I think it's a really important concept. But then later on, she mentions that everything is hard in some way. So this kind of speaks directly, I would say, to the myth that when you find the thing that you were made to do, that everything just becomes easy. I really believe that there's always going to be some element of your life that is hard, which is kind of why I'm not a big fan of goals, because if all you do is set goals, the picture you have in your head when you set those goals is, once I get to this point, things are going to click, and then I don't have to worry about this anymore. No, what happens when you get to that point is you realize that there's actually something else that you need to do as well. The goalposts have now moved on you, and you feel discouraged after you do that a couple of times because you're not making the progress you thought you were going to make, and that gap develops, as opposed to looking back at the progress you've made and you see the gain, right? So I think the thing to be cognizant of here is to choose your hard. Mm-hmm. Choose the thing that you want to work on that is going to be hard. Don't shy away from things because they are hard, but also don't try to do all the hard things either. Focus on the thing right now that you are trying to do that is hard. And again, focus on the growth that you are able to achieve, not on the outcome, and get frustrated at how slowly you are making progress towards it. The fact that you are making progress is the important thing here. Yeah. But I just like that term. She didn't actually use this, but this is what I wrote in the margin: is everything is hard in some way. Okay, so we shouldn't just find the things that are easy. We should choose the things that are going to be hard, and we focus on those aspects of the options that we have available to us and the existence that we have and the things that we do every single day. And again, if you can tie that back to true passion, something that provides meaning, you know why you're doing the hard thing. you know why it's valuable, you know why it's going to make your relationships better or whatever other outcome you're trying to achieve. That creates the motivation to show up and do the thing every day.
Yeah. Okay, I want to do a thought experiment before we move on to the next essay. So you brought it
Okay.
up. It was something I didn't know if we were going to get to or not, but she basically makes the comment, and you said it, and I don't remember the way you phrased it, but basically like the thing you should be doing should feel effortless. Okay, like she makes some sort of comment around there that it should feel effortless. So my first intro question to you, Mike, is, do you have a thing in your life that feels effortless? Like when you do it, you're like, oh, this is just, I just do this naturally.
No. I mean, if you probably followed me around every day and said, well, what about that? What about that? What about that? You would find something. We tend not to value the things that come easy to us. So it's hard to identify them when asked a question like you just asked me. But also, I think the larger point here is I think I disagree with, well, find the thing that's easy for you to do, but it's hard for everybody else, and just do that. You could start there. That's a good, especially if people are willing to pay you money for the thing. Cal Newport talks about how money is a neutral indicator of value. That's a great place to start in becoming so good they can't ignore you and developing the value that you can contribute to the marketplace. But I disagree with the fact that you should just do the easy things. I think that is a quick way to a fixed mindset.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So the reason I asked this question is because she makes a statement, and I think to myself, all right, what is the thing that comes to my head first that it is effortless for me? And immediately I go, oh, teaching, facilitating learning, right? Like put me in front of a room of people and have me guide them in a learning process. And like, that's effortless. But here's the problem. I've got like 20 years of experience, right, to doing this, right? Like it was not effortless by any stretch of the imagination when I first started doing it. Like the amount of prep that I would have to do to figure out like what is the right flow to get people into thinking about it, into talking about it, to help them help introduce them to this concept versus this concept, or this style of thinking versus this style of thinking. And even today, the actual interaction in the classroom is fairly effortless. But the amount of work I do prior to entering the classroom that allows it to be effortless, it's by no means effort. Like there's a substantial amount of prep and thinking and stewing on an idea and like thinking about the way I want to introduce something or whatever it is. And it's like, I don't know. I wish it was that easy. Like I wish there was this thing where it was like, oh, this is just effortless to me, and somebody's going to pay me $1 million to do it, and I'm just going to do it, and it's going to be 100%, hunky dory, and that's life. But I just don't think that's real. Like I really don't think that's real. And you brought it up, so you got me on my soapbox. But it's like, I just think now, I think finding the things that you enjoy that feel effortless. Okay, cool. Like I'm in for that, right? Like that's an idea that you enjoy them, they feel effortless, because I think it's easier to get into that state of flow where you're like really excelling. But then trying to say that it's always going to be effortless and there isn't going to be a period of hard work either before or after or during that you're going to really have to like, plug in and like really hunker down for that. I just don't think that's realistic. So, okay, sorry. Soapbox ended.
Yeah. So we need to unpack this a little bit further since we're camping out on this. I actually recorded an episode of Focused, which will be released before this. So I'll put a link to this in the show notes. But the whole episode was in response to a listener question about developing skills. And the framing that I used when I was building out the outline was the book Peak by Anders Ericsson.
Okay.
Have you read that book?
I've not, no.
It's a great book. And one of the things that he calls out in there is this example of a 10,000 hour rule, which was popularized by Malcolm Gladwell with the violinists who spent 10,000 hours. And now they're experts at what they do. Are you familiar with that?
I am, yes.
Or at least okay. So he basically debunks that. He says there's nothing magical about that 10,000 hours. And that Malcolm Gladwell, when he referenced this, claimed that all of the violinists at age 20 had put in that much time, when in reality, uh, only about half of them did. So some of them were experts, but they hadn't put in the 10,000 hours. And so Anders Ericsson's thing is, well, what allows you to develop a skill quickly is this concept of deliberate practice or purposeful practice, I guess, depending on whether this is just going to be something fun that you do or something that you do professionally that you're going to get paid for. So the difference here, there's like common components that go into this. But when you're talking about deliberate practice and purposeful practice, you essentially have well-defined specific goals, just an intention on what tiny piece of this are you trying to improve right now. So you're not trying to improve your ability to play the guitar. You're trying to improve your ability to play a hard passage of music, or you want to master the pentatonic blues scale in the key of C, etc. And then you have to be focused on that, on improving that specific thing. You need to involve some sort of feedback mechanism so you can look at what you did and you can recognize, oh, I could actually improve with this. And then you have to get outside of your comfort zone. So that's not effortless. If you want to get to the point where things are effortless, you have to put in a significant amount of effort.
Yes.
But
yes,
that's the catch-22. I think Adam Grant talked about this in a book not too long ago, about how we tend to gravitate towards the things that are easy for us, but the things that are easy for us are easy because we developed expertise there, and the way to develop the expertise is to do the things that are hard.
Yeah.
So if all you do is focus on, well, what's easy for me, you're never going to grow.
Agree. Couldn't agree more. Okay, let's move to round 5. So I'm at essay 50 at this point, so roughly halfway through the book. How we lose our minds to other people's gods. I thought this was an interesting one just to kind of call some folks out. But basically, she thinks about it as something that's worshipped and adored. She kind of hones in on the dollar bill and money, and how like we tend to, society, kind of gets us this idea that like money rules all, so therefore that's what we should go after. Then she also ties it to kind of power and ego, and this idea of power and ego, and how that connects there. So the one statement that I'll pull here is, it seems like the task of the generation, and she says century maybe, will be radically accepting ourselves in a society that feeds the opposite. So like, what is the core idea that I liked here was basically, what are people pushing down on you that you should care about? And then are you actually paying attention to that? Or are you driving the things that you should care about? So part of this might come from the fact that like, I feel like we're always being told how to be, told how to act, told how to, where to spend our money, what to do with our stuff. Like I feel like that's a very, very common thing right now, where we're always trying to be influenced, if you will, like for lack of a better phrase. And I have a vendetta against that, because it's like, no, I don't think like that's the best way to approach our lives. So I think that's why this chapter resonated with me. Why this essay resonated with me so much.
Cool. Yeah, I don't really have a whole lot to add to that.
No worries.
Should I move to the next one then?
Yeah, let's move to your number 5.
Okay. So this is actually like the last official one that I've got. I've got one more I could pull, but we sort of talked about it already. The next one I've got here is essay 57, 50 people on the most liberating thought they've ever had. And I thought that these were kind of cool in terms of like the examples. And the approach here reminds me a lot of 30 Lessons for Living by Dr. Carl Pilmer, which again, like I prefer that book. But there's a lot of work that went into that. Like he was a doctor who went into nursing homes and interviewed, I think, 1,000 people who were there just living their best life, and asking what made your life good. What was it that allowed you to look back fondly on the life that you've lived, and condensed all of their responses into 30 specific lessons. These are basically just like 50 anecdotes, kind of along the same lines though, asking people, what is the most liberating thought that you've had in terms of creating the life that you want to live, which I think is an important concept. The number one here that she mentions, I get to choose what I think about. That's really good. She talks about that again, I think, later in another essay. about how you get to control your thoughts. So you can't really control whether something like pops into your brain, but you can control whether you are going to meditate and ruminate on those things. Like you can dismiss those negative thoughts and bring your focus to something else. So that I think is really powerful. And then number 7, she mentions, I don't have to accept anything. And kind of related to that, I don't have to change everything. That's the big one for me. I guess the don't have to change everything. That's at the root of like the memento mori stuff that I do with the Daily Note and Obsidian, is like cosmic insignificance theory, Oliver Berkman would call it. You don't have to change the entire world. Do what you can with what you've got, but at the end, that's all you can do.
Yeah.
Number 15, nothing is permanent, not even the worst feelings. That one speaks to me because it's been a rough year and a half. Trying to get my business off the ground. And then you add the creator stuff on top of that, where it's kind of surprising to me. I realized when I was at Craft and Commerce this summer, there are a lot of creators that deal with mental health stuff. And I think it's because you try to keep it separate, but ultimately you can't. Like, you make this thing and you share it with the world, and it's you.
Yeah.
And then when people don't download it or view it or like it, it's kind of like, oh, nobody likes me.
Yeah.
Sounds stupid to verbalize it.
No, but it makes sense. Yeah.
And then you do it regularly, like it kind of can compound. What you focus on expands. This too shall pass. I don't know. There's just a whole bunch of really good questions in here. You haven't failed till you've stopped trying. Wisdom is knowing that you don't and will never really know anything. Yep. You teach people how to treat you. You get in life what you have the courage to ask for. When you step into a library, all the knowledge in the world is before you. I think that's the big one. That's number 44. That's just to camp on that for a little bit. That's a big reason why I've got so many books around my house. One of the pieces of advice that I give people all the time is when someone that you look up to recommends a book, don't jot it down draft style on your Apple Watch like Cory does his ideas when he's out for a run. Open up the Amazon app, buy it immediately. It'll show up in at your house in a couple of days. Add it to your, and Lord LeCompte would call this an anti-library. Actually, I think it was Nicholas Taleb maybe who came up with that concept first. I can't remember. But the concept of the anti-library is you have all these books that are speaking to all these topics, and they're already giving you value even if you haven't read them yet. Well, how can that be? Because I know that if I needed to go dig into whatever topic, I've kind of pre-filtered the sources for that, and it's within arm's reach. I haven't read all, I think we have 1,700 books throughout our house.
How do you know that? How do you know you have 1,700 books?
Well, because Toby tracked them at one point inside of an app called Book Tracker. So at that point, I think it was like 1,500, 1,600, and we keep buying books. So we've got them everywhere. I've got a bookshelf over there. I got a Calyx over there. I've got books even on the wall behind me as we record this. We've got books in the windowsills in the living room. We've got this like tree-shaped stand in our bedroom. Like, there are books everywhere, and I kind of love it.
Yeah, I agree.
But basically, when if you were to say today, you can never buy another book, we could keep Bookworm going for several years.
Just
because
what you
I have. Yeah, and it's not because I have that many books. It's because that I have that many books that are relevant for the Bookworm audience, because I'm naturally curious about these things. And whenever I've come across something that somebody mentions in a YouTube video or I hear about on a podcast, I'm like, I'm going to buy that book. It's going to be on my bookshelf. And then occasionally when I'm like, I don't know what to read next, I just look at what I've got there. I'm like, oh, that one, that's right. I bought this when I was interested in figuring this out. Well, that's still something that I'm curious about. So I'll pick that up and I'll read that. So yeah, I mean, if there was going to be one essay out of this whole book that was like the most valuable, I think it's probably that one.
I could not agree with you more. I'm really glad you brought this one up in round 5. I have a bunch of, things I pulled from this one. Interestingly, we pulled different. Now there's 50 of them, so that actually kind of would make sense. But like, You don't remember your years, you remember your moments. There is no grand moment in life. You wake up and you go, aha, I've made it. Like happiness is in the details, the joy is in the journey. Like she gets into the idea we take our lives too seriously. In a few hundred years, most people will be completely forgotten about. Like that's the memento mori kind of thing. Now, I think she goes too far in that one because at the end of it, give love and do we most generally want to. It won't matter anyway, so make it matter now. Which I get what she's saying, but it's like I think that's a little nihilist to say like it won't matter anyway because it's gonna matter I think to somebody. But like I thought these 50. If there was a like pull away, recommend it to somebody else, I would not, I'll preview. I would not recommend the whole book. I would recommend Essay 57. It's like read Essay 57 and maybe these other, a couple of the other ones. I thought this was one of the sheer highlights of the book. Okay. At this point, Mike, we have to talk about what we want to do, right? So we're about an hour and a half into the episode. I'm okay stopping here. You said that was your last one that you had like really identified. Do you want to do one more, or do you want to just call it now and move on to action items and style and rating? I'm good either way. I don't think the audience will be upset if we move forward.
Yeah, well, the last one that I had starred was, she mentions the Stoics had this exercise for embracing the thing that they were scared of, which I already mentioned is like Tim Ferriss's fear setting example. So that particular section, it's towards the end of the book. I think it's on page 428 in the printed one. It's a little bit weird because she's sort of talking hand wavy about the Stoics, but doesn't really get deep into the Stoic stuff, which is when I had the idea and I asked you if you wanted to cover Meditations by Marcus Aurelius at some point, because Stoicism seems to be a thing. And granted, we've covered a lot of Ryan Holiday books and he's kind of the Stoic guy. So, but I feel like it's becoming more popular, and a lot more productivity and self-help books are referencing Stoic philosophy. So she just kind of sort of hand wavy about it and doesn't really talk about what it really is. That's fine. It's not her thing, but I was thinking, we've never really gone to the source with this stuff.
Yeah.
And Meditations by Marcus Aurelius seems to be like the one that a lot of people will refer to. So I don't think we'll cover it next. I've already got a book that I want to cover for that. And then I think you've got a different book. But now that I know that you're open to the concept, I think we'll probably cover it at some point.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good. So there are more that I've kind of pulled out some gems from, but we're going to move on for the sake of the show and keeping it reasonable. Let's move to action items. I'll go first. I do not have any action items for this, and I don't feel bad about it for a second. Like, I am totally okay with 101 essays, kind of doing the whole like slap your hands, dust off the dust, and just moving this one forward. So I will freely tell you I have no action items, and now on to you.
Yeah, well, I think I probably could have found some action items if I had looked for them. But as I mentioned at the beginning, my approach to taking notes for this book was forced to be different. So I did not go back through all of my highlights and look for, what do I want to take action on from this book. So I also have no action items, which is probably a good thing since I failed at both of them this time anyways.
Yeah, you got a lot going on. So that actually makes a bunch of sense. All right, so now we move into style and rating. You've made me wait an incredibly long time to do style and rating. Here we go. The style of this book is, as we've said and described many times, it's 101 essays. So it's 101 what I believe to be independent thoughts written and then compiled. And there are connections between them, but I don't believe they are intentional connections between them. There's no references between the different essays. There's no I would say there's repeated ideas, but there's no repeated I'll get to this one in essay 47 or 52 or whatever it is, right? So there doesn't feel like there's a theme or a thread other than the ones that kind of just naturally came up. It feels like, you call it out listicles. I think I was very disheartened when I got into it and we got into the second, the third, the fourth one, where it was, here's the essay, here's a paragraph or two of text, and then now I'm going to talk about the 17 of these things, and then I'm going to talk about the 20 of these things, or I'm going to talk about the 5 of these things. And I don't mind reading those things, but it was different than what I thought it was going to be, and I did not like it. Like, I did not like the listicle idea. It gets to something you've said, so hopefully I don't steal this one from you. Everything felt very surface level. So it felt very like I'm writing this to be a catalyst to, yes, change the way you think, but not giving enough thought or detail. Like, if she'd have shrunk it down to 50, but then she'd have unpacked them more. If she'd have shrunk it down to 30 and she'd have really unpacked them more, I just think it would have had more meaning. I understand that wasn't the gist. The gist was 101, whatever. But like, for me, from a style and rating standpoint, for me, less would have been more. Less but more depth would have been more and better to me. So it felt, if I already said this, I'm sorry, but it felt like these were my blog posts, or these were my Instagram posts that I flushed out a little bit more and turned it into a book, and kind of went that realm. I believe the Pareto principle applies to this book, right? That 80% of the value comes out of 20% of the text. That, like, there's good stuff in here. I don't think it's a complete like waste of time to read it. Like, I actually think there are some good thought-provoking things here. I mean, we just talked for an hour and a half about some of those good thought-provoking things. And I really think those are there. But I really think it's the 80-20, right? Like, 80% of the value really comes from a smaller amount. The challenge of this from a recommendation standpoint is, I think the 20% of the book is different for everybody that reads it. And I think it's very, very personal. It's very, very individual. So I actually think if I read this book 5 years from now, I would highlight very, very different things than I highlighted right now, or in this current reading. So my general gist for the style is, did not like the style. My general gist for the kind of the content was, I could have done with significantly less of the listicles, significantly less of the highlight touch points, and much more of the breaking down. But in all fairness, I did get value out of the book, right? Like, so the things that I highlighted, the things that I took away are good, but they're good for me thinking about them deeper. They're not necessarily good for exactly what I got out of the book, like I would have with some other books. Okay, so very, very long-winded style discussion. Mike, my rating on this book is a 1, right? I did not like this book.
Wow.
This book took me a lot of willpower and effort. And like, I wanted to say to you, like, had we not been freely, had we not been talking about this book and not been doing this for a bookworm episode, I would have stopped reading this book. I would have closed the book. I maybe would have made it to essay 20. Maybe. I don't even know if I'd have made it that far. And I would have closed the book and just been like, yeah, I'm done. Like, I don't need to read this book. And I put it away. I just really did not care for this book. So there you go. There's my style and rating. But I will say I got some value out of it. So I'm not going to tell you I didn't get any value out of it, but I just didn't like it at all. So go ahead.
All right. Well, the whole thing that I've been thinking about with this book is, who is this book for? So I picked this, or I read this because you picked it, but I was trying to envision a scenario where I would have stumbled upon this and thought, yeah, I need to read this. Because my approach to reading books typically is to solve a problem that I am currently facing. I'm curious about whatever topic. I'm having trouble getting my habits to stick, so I'll go pick up Atomic Habits by James Clear. Like, that's how I typically approach books. And as you mentioned, it's kind of hard to identify a specific theme, or this is the problem. If you're dealing with this is who this book is for. Now, I've read a different book, The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest. This was for Bookworm episode like 124, I think. And I just looked it up. I gave that book 3.5 stars. So that was when I was doing half stars, but Joe gave it a 3. I rated it higher than he did. So I think that there is a version of this where she's speaking to a specific topic and she is a good writer. That's not what this book is. Reading the blurb on the back of the paperback here, it says 101 essays that will change the way you think. The global bestseller and social media phenomenon is a collection of author Brianna Wiest's most beloved pieces of writing. Her meditations include why you should pursue purpose over passion, embrace negative thinking, see the wisdom in daily routine, and become aware of the cognitive biases that are creating the way that you see your life. Some of these pieces have never been seen. Others have been read by millions of people around the world. Regardless, each will leave you thinking, this idea changed my life. So this is for people who are Brianna Wiest fans. Mm-hmm. This is the ultimate collection of Brianna Wiest. And I have purchased books on Amazon previously that were the ultimate collection by, I don't know, Jim Rohn, I think was one that I bought via Audible specifically, because that's the kind of thing that I typically just want to like listen to when I'm not listening to a podcast and got a long trip or out for a run, something like that, where it's just kind of in the background. I want to hear more about what this person has to say. So all that to say, my only exposure to Brianna Wiest previously was that I had read this other book by her. I am not who this book is written for. From a bookworm perspective, I agree this is not a great book because this book is not solving a specific problem. You think about people who are downloading Bookworm. I think a lot of people will look at, some people will just download and listen to every episode. We love you guys. Thank you for doing that. Yeah. But there are other people who will look at the book that we're covering and the topic that we're going to talk about, and they will decide whether or not they're going to listen to the episode. Those poor people had no idea. Right? What the heck is this? Yeah. What does this book want to be when it grows up? So I don't know, like from a bookworm perspective, I think it probably ranks a little bit lower. From the purpose that it was written, I think it probably ranks a little bit higher. I will say I don't think Brianna Wiest is my personal cup of tea. I think she is a great writer. I think she writes very well about the topics that she speaks about. I think she has a unique voice that is going to resonate with certain people very much. And those people, if you like Brianna Wiest, like this is a great book for you. You will get more Brianna Wiest. You will get things that have not been written or published other places. And if you're just trying to get like the whole catalog by a particular author, then this is one that you should add to your collection. That's not my preference. I've brought it up multiple times. He speaks very briefly about this thing in this particular essay. I would rather dive deep into this and let's talk to an expert and read 200 pages about this specific thing, not, a short little essay. Now, that doesn't mean that the essay is bad. That's just my preference. I want to dive deep into these things. I don't really care for the cursory surface level stuff, which again is a preference. It kind of reminds me of Seth Godin, but the difference with the Seth Godin books that I have read is Seth basically knows I'm going to dive deep onto this particular topic, and I'm going to collect all the essays that speak to this particular topic into this book, where this is kind of a survey. Yeah. Right? It's your professor. It's a survey course.
It is.
Brianna Wiest.
Well, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's why it's the 101, right? Like, because that would be your intro class is your 101 class. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a tie there.
Yep. So I'm actually going to rate it 3 stars, and that's just because of the context that I have and the other books that I have rated 2 stars. I don't know that I've ever given a book a 1-star rating because I can always find something that's valuable to me going through it. Sometimes it's hard. There are a couple books specifically, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. Like, there are some books that, you describing the slog to get through it. I get it. I've been there. But yeah, I think that there were some things in here that made me think. And for that reason alone, I think it was valuable. I don't think I'm going to necessarily recommend that everyone go pick this one up.
No.
If you are excited about this one, you know who you are, go ahead and get it. Everybody else, you can probably skip this one and pick something different.
Well, and big disclaimer out there, if you look at Amazon, this is a very highly rated book, right? Like, so there are thousands of people, tens of thousands of people who very much like this book. Like you said very well, that I didn't say nearly as well. It just wasn't my cup of tea, right? So like, it wasn't the kind of book, and I hadn't thought about, like, maybe it just wasn't the bookworm book. Like I said to my wife at one point, I was like, man, I picked a really bad book for the show, right? Like, on this round. And I was like, I feel bad about it. I picked a really bad book for me personally for the show. So
I think there's nothing wrong with this type of book. You know, we just got to change the approach, which I think we just talked about the topics, and I'm glad to have talked through that stuff. Regarding the rating, I wanted to call this out because it's on the Amazon page. You mentioned, like, it's got 16,000 ratings and it's 4.7 on Amazon. On Goodreads, it's got a 3.8. So the difference there of almost a full point between Amazon and Goodreads is an indication to me that with Amazon ratings, like, you can just send all your fans there and leave a 5-star rating, and it can skew a little bit high. But when you've got I like how they've got the star rating for Amazon, and then right below that, the Goodreads rating. The closer that those are, I feel like the more true representation of the rating of the book you're seeing when you're looking at the stars.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to upcoming books. So, Mike, you have the next book. What are we reading?
I do. One that I've had for a long time but have not gotten through. We're going to read Storyworthy by Matthew Dix, and this was one that was recommended by Ali Abdaal back in the day when I came across him as a productivity YouTuber, started binging all this stuff. He mentioned a couple books. Like, I mentioned The Pathless Path, I think, earlier, which I really enjoyed. So that was a big Ali Abdaal recommendation. He talked about that one multiple times. And then Matthew Dix Storyworthy is another one that just keeps coming up. And essentially, Matthew Dix is a phenomenal storyteller. So I think we're going to learn how to tell better stories, but time will tell, I guess.
Awesome. And then after that is my book. So a guy I know tells me that if a guy recommends a book, you should probably pick it up and read it. So Mike recommended a book called Good Work, Reclaiming Your Inner Ambition by Paul Millard. Paul Millard is the guy who wrote The Pathless Path. So it's a new book out fairly recently. It's out, right, Mike? It's
yes.
Released, hasn't it? Yeah. Okay. So it's a fairly newly released book. So we're gonna look at that, and that'll be in 2 episodes from now. Mike, do you have any gap books?
Well, I was going to read Good Work as a gap book, but then when you decided to pick it, I think I'll say I don't have a gap book then. I will say I ordered that one. I always get the physical copies. So as we record this on a Wednesday, it was released yesterday on paperback on Tuesday. The Kindle version has been available since Monday. I don't know why the Kindle and the paperback weren't released at the same time, but whatever. So I've ordered the paperback version, and I am going to read that one when it comes, just because I've been looking forward to this book for quite a while. Pathless Path was a very influential book for me, and I really like Paul Millard's style. So I am going to start this one probably pretty early, since we're not going to cover it for another 2 episodes, but looking forward to reading it.
Nice. I do not have a gap book right now. My gap book will be an activity. It's actually an action item, and that's to give critical feedback on Life HQ. So that's my that's my gap book because that's more relevant and more important to my life.
Well, technically that is kind of like a book because I've written 50,000 original words for it.
Yes, it is. It's very much like a book. Yes.
And lots of screenshots.
Thanks everybody for listening. If you're interested in ad-free content, if you're interested in the bootleg version of the show, if you're interested in the pro show, where today we talked about if we could kind of instantly and or even by working get some sort of expertise in a craft or in some skill, what would we want to get? If you're interested in those, we do have a pro feed. You can go to patreon.com/bookwormfm and you can subscribe to join into the pro feed and get those perks. You also can get a digital wallpaper there. Like I said, the show comes out early. You get the bootleg copy early, and then you get the pro show that is also has added content and is ad free. If you're, we're gonna put 101 essays on the shelf, If you're reading along with us, pick up Storyworthy by Matthew Dix, and we'll talk to you next time.